Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. And sometimes, like today, I do a tag video. I was recently tagged by Lucas over at The Bits of Lit to do the whale tag, which is a fun little video that you do all about questions about books that you read, as is typical on booktube tag videos. But this time there is a twist with whales. So I thought it would be interesting enough, and the questions are, I'm knowledgeable enough about the questions to want to do the tag, or at least that they're relatable enough for me to want to do the tag. If you're listening to this video at all, if you don't even have a booktube channel, but you're still watching this video, Bevan, you should probably do this tag where you just talk about the books that you read. You don't even have to, make a specific video about any one of these books. You simply have to talk about them for a little bit. Maybe like a minute per book. Very simple, right, Bevan? And now to talk to everyone else, without further ado, I will answer the following questions. Question number 1, the blue whale. The blue whale is the largest, heaviest animal on Earth ever. What's the longest book you've read or want to read? Or what's the heaviest subject you've ever read about? Very fun fact there about blue whales. The heaviest subject that I've ever read about is probably the Holocaust and concentration camps, which I've read in Mouse recently, which was a pretty quality book about the treatment of Jews during World War II, and also in Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which was partially about his experience in the concentration camps and partially about the aftermath of that, having been in the concentration camps and trying to find a reason to go on, and also talking about logotherapy, which is his foundational kind of study that he built his therapy off of. So I would say pretty heavy subject to talk about, what with murdering and ethnic genocide and, people betraying one another and having to fight for survival. A lot of pretty heavy topics to talk about. Also, racism, and ethnic cleansing and stuff like that, which another book that I read in the recent past, at least, is The Injustice Never Leaves You, which is about the treatment of Mexicans in Texas, especially after Texas became a state, and how the Texas Rangers were really essential for protecting white hegemony in the state of Texas, going out of their way to disallow lynchings happen, to basically do a bunch of massacres, to reinforce racist policies in the state of Texas. Pretty hideous type of thing, and one of the hardest things I've had to read about, because, as the title says, the injustice never leaves you. It's really hard to read about, but very important to read about because it affects policy today. The second question is sperm whale. Sperm whales routinely dive to a depth of 2,000 feet to feed on squid, but can dive to a depth of 10,000 feet. I can also do that, but you don't hear me bragging. What is a book that has motivated you to look deeper into a subject, character, situation, or series? And my answer to that is Indian Horse, which was a fictional story based on the author's Richard Wagamis. He based on his experiences in the Indian boarding school. It's about sexual abuse. It's about racism towards Indigenous Canadians. It's about trying to really identify who you are and coming to terms with the fact that although you lived a traumatic past, you are not your trauma. You can be so much more to that. And I thought Indian horse made me want to look deeper into the racism and in the United States and Canada, and the not only that, but also in Australia, because I'm knowledgeable what happened with Native Americans in the United States, but what happened to the native indigenous population in Australia, the Aboriginals? It doesn't seem like it was they had a much better experience. And I think looking into that a little bit deeper made me a better person, and certainly gave me another thing to holler about in my activism when it's not just advocating for my own needs or people who are like me, but also trying to draw awareness of the atrocities committed against others. Number 3, Humpback Whale. Humpback whales sing long, complex songs they have in common with other individual humpback whales. These songs can change uniformly for entire groups of whales. What is a book that has changed meaning for you over the years, and why did it change? I think an answer to that is World War Z by Max Brooks. When I read it in college, in like my freshman year, I thought it was a pretty good story, very impactful, and it was also a really good horror story. It really scared me. And at the time that I had read it, like the meaning for it was that maybe our bureaucratic systems aren't enough to protect against something dangerous like a zombie virus. Not a whole lot of depth to it in terms of other applications, though. I thought it was just a simple zombie story. But as I went through college and began to learn more about the world, I began to see the interconnections, like the world relationships at the heart of World War Z, and how they're struggling and things aren't really getting better, and how even though we survived a zombie war, maybe we're not capable of really surviving, past our own individual wars. Pretty unfortunate in that regard. And then when I read it recently, like I read it because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I really saw like how Max Brooks was highlighting, like in the event of like an infectious spread, our systems aren't prepared to handle that sort of thing. So kind of like back in my freshman year, but even more advanced now, because I'm realizing that the corruption in the system and the unwillingness to provide any positive social change by those in power are contributing to this. It's not simply the system in place, it's the people who have a role to play in this as well. Number 4 is orcas. Orcas or killer whales are incredibly smart social whales or dolphins. What's a book that you felt was especially smart, fiction or nonfiction, and made you really think? And I think the answer to that was The End of Everything, Astrophysically Speaking by Dr. Katie Mack, an interesting book about the different ways that the universe could end. Very smart in terms of accumulating all the knowledge of space and astrophysics, and really presenting it in a coherent, easy to understand manner. Like she dumbs it down. Katie dumbs it down for the reader, like especially me, who's not like as knowledgeable as a PhD level person, but not enough that it makes it relevant in any sort of way. It's definitely very clever, and she does a lot of work to make it accessible while still maintaining its scientific nature. Also a little bit worrying because now I know the different ways that the universe could end, including like the idea that gravity could just decide, or like the laws of physics could just decide to finally settle into their final state, and then the entire universe kind of leaps out of existence for a moment and comes back into being, and none of us are there anymore because we were part of the old order, and now the new order is just completely wiped it over, like a new save on a computer, which is, I think, the best I can explain it. But it's very baffling and very scary at the same time, and also understandable that these things won't happen for millions or billions of years, hopefully. Number 5 is beluga. Belugas are nicknamed the canaries of the seas because of the sounds they make. What's a book you wanted to talk to others after reading it, and why? I think I'm going to answer in the same way that Lucas over at the Bits of Lit answered, in that he'll frequently talk to me whenever he reads a very good, interesting, or even terrible book, just to talk to me about what it's like or whatnot. And I do much of the same, trying to share my thoughts and often recommending a book if I think it's up his alley. Although I think we both reserve recommendations for when something is truly good, because you can recommend like an okay book, like Lady Chatterley's Lover, but you got to save the really good recommendations for when it counts, when it's gonna knock your socks off. But one book that I did mention to him right away after I read it, and even when I was reading it, is Stoner by John Williams. I thought it was phenomenal. You probably, if you follow this channel, you've heard me talk about it so many times before, but I just wanted to talk to Lucas about it when I finished it, because holy hell, this book was fascinating. And I had to talk to someone about it because there's so many things worth noting there. The idea, the characterization, and the themes that John Williams plays with, there's just so much to love about Stoner. And I definitely recommend it to you, whoever's watching out there. Go check it out. It's not for everybody, but the idea behind it, that there's beauty in the mundane, is very beautiful. And if you make it through the story, I guarantee you'll walk away with something, with having felt at the emotional power of the book. At least that's the way I felt. And maybe not everyone feels that way, but that's why I wanted to talk about it, is because this book made me feel a plethora of emotions. Number 6 is Narwhal Swimming in the Ocean. Pretty huge, and there's a song, I'm forgetting the lyrics to it, but male narwhals, known as unicorns of the seas, have 2 teeth, including one long spiraling tooth that can grow nearly 9 feet long. That's happened to me before. What's a book you've heard great things about before reading, only to discover it was less magical after reading it? I think my go-to answer there is probably On Stranger Tides, which was about pirates. Lucas and I read it for a booktube reading challenge that I tossed to him, and I really thought it'd be so good because I heard some people on Twitter, chatting it up. I thought it'd be pretty good because of that, but it turned out to be not very good. It's somewhat misogynistic, and the weird twist and turns that it takes, it doesn't quite make sense to me. And I feel like it brings down the book overall. And I thought Lucas felt the same way when we were talking about it. So ultimately, it was a disappointment more than anything else. And another answer is the same one Lucas gave, which is Percy Jackson. I had heard good things in high school about it, because a lot of people talked about the Percy Jackson series and how it was comparable to Harry Potter, but I had never read it for one reason or another. And when I finally got to it recently for this channel, I found that I did not enjoy the first book. And I think that's more to do with the fact that it wasn't for me anymore. The big problem was that I should have read it when I was a teenager, probably would have loved it, but when reading it when you're 29 years old, 28 years old, it probably has less magic in that way. Number 7 is the Bowhead whale. While it's evident bowhead whales may live well beyond 100 years of age, there's evidence they may live to be 200 years old. What is the oldest book in your collection, or what book has been in your collection the longest? I think my answer to that is probably, in my physical collection, World War Z, which was published in 2006, and I've had it since 2011, or House of Leaves, which was written in the year 2000, although I have that fairly recently. I think there might also be some physical books that are older than that, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked through my collection in some time. But my oldest book is actually on my Kindle, and that would be Beowulf, which was published somewhere in the year, or in the 900s. Something like that. It's a pretty old book, and it's a pretty good book. I definitely recommend that you go read it if you find a chance, because it's historically important. But also, it's a pretty badass story about a dude killing monsters and being a cool Danish man. Question 8, the Atlantic gray whale. Atlantic gray whales were sadly wiped out by humans. It's not my fault. I didn't do anything. Today, only Pacific gray whales remain. Save the whales. What's one book that's either out of print or out of fashion that you wish you could make a comeback? I don't know the answer to that. I've been kind of stuck since I read it yesterday. But I'm not really aware of any book that's out of print or out of fashion, mainly because nobody talks about those except in very niche circles. Like if a book is popular or in print, that must be someone's reading it. So all the books that are out of print and largely forgotten about, how am I supposed to know what those are? So unfortunately, I can't really give an answer to that because there really isn't one. Because like if a book isn't out of fashion until no one is reading it anymore, and then everyone's forgotten about it, and then how would I know again if something is out of fashion if nobody ever talks about it? So I don't know, something to think about there, I guess. And then the last question is the bonus, the Moby Dick question. Moby Dick was the great white sperm whale Captain Ahab never caught. What is a book you want to own but have never found or bought? What's stopping you from hooking that book? A book that I haven't, I would say, bought, at least a physical copy. I think I have a Kindle copy, is Stoner by John Williams. I definitely want to own a physical copy of that because it's a very beautiful book. But also East of Eden, another one of my favorite Steinbeck books, favorite books in general. And I do want to read it or own a physical copy of it so that I can have it in my collection and can refer to it anytime I want. So those are the two ones that I'm hoping that I can hook pretty soon, and who knows, maybe after I'm done making this video, I'll go out and buy it. That's the thing that's stopping me. Like I just keep forgetting to buy it. But I will do that after making this video. And so yeah, those are my answers to the whale tag. Again, I'm tagging everyone out there. If you have any interesting things to say about my answers, comment below. Let's have a discussion about whales and books. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this tag and go do it, or this channel, and watch more of my videos, because it's all about spreading the news. And otherwise, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and whalish travels. Farewell.